All right, everyone, how are you? Welcome to this week's episode of our podcast. It's called Is Breakfast Included? Thanks for stopping by. On the show this week, I talk with author Jude Warne. Jude has a new book called Lowdown, The Music of Boz Scaggs. It's a great book. We talked about that book, the music of Boz Scaggs, of course, her upbringing in New York, how her parents' music influenced her. We covered it all. She even told us what she's got coming up next. It was a lot of fun getting to know Jude. Let's check it out. Tell everyone who you are.
Hi, I'm Jude Warne. I'm a writer, mainly a music writer, and my new book, Lowdown, the Music of Boz Scaggs, came out a few months ago in April.
Right on. And before we get any further, where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I grew up in New York, in Manhattan, uptown. So it's my favorite place or one of my favorite places other than LA. And I'm still based here mainly.
Right on. And researching you, I noticed a lot of your published interviews, your books, they deal with music. You're a rock journalist, so to speak, right?
Yes, that's mainly what I enjoy writing about most.
Yeah.
I have done some fiction stuff, like I did a YA series several years ago. I tried to put a lot of music references in there and
Yeah.
get some stuff into the kids. But yes, mainly I do interviews and some reviews, album, book, live reviews sometimes.
And
Yeah.
was there a lot of music growing up around you? Is that kind of what led to this?
Yeah, yes. My parents are big rock pop music fans. And I like to call them celebrators, not just fans, because it seems better or bigger than being a fan, because it was just important in our household, always discussing facts about different albums, liner notes, that kind of thing. And I got brainwashed early on. And then I became a musician when I was a teenager, more studying classical voice and jazz and stuff and piano. When I went to LaGuardia High School in New York, the Fame High School. So that was a big, boost of my education in that area. And I feel like that informs my writing now, even today. So I kind of lace the interests together.
Yeah. You said celebrators. That's such a great term because I was one of those kids that read the liner notes and wanted to know who produced the album and why the guy on the cover wasn't the drummer that played on the album. Like, why is this name different than all that kind of stuff? I mean, that to me is a lost art, so to speak. Like
Mhm.
I think this younger generation really doesn't care who.
Uh,
Can
I
we go
know.
on? We could probably go on for hours about that. I could just
uh,
see from the look on your face.
Waxing poetic. Yeah, just without the tactile album, like even now, when I get a new album sometimes, or if I listen to it first on Spotify or a listening platform, and I don't read the details, I would like to, but it's not really, doesn't come up as an option so quickly. And you get used to that format. And then when I compare it to my other listening experiences from years ago, or even now when I do vinyl stuff and I sit with the album and listen at the same time, it's such a richer experience. The artwork, it's so immersive. Your attention's better, I feel like, because you're really focusing on just the album. You're not walking down the street with it in your headphones doing a million things. So yes, I like the old school.
I know, right? It was so to me, I miss that about music. And I know that vinyl made a huge comeback, but to me, I miss that about everything. Cassettes, CDs. Um, I think one of the greatest scenes in a movie is in Almost Famous when Cameron
Uh,
Crowe's character as a child is playing that Who album and he's just kind of rubbing his hands on the album cover. That to me. Anyway, I
I
could go
love
on like that forever.
Me too. Yeah. And
Uh,
I try to do that with the books with the America biography that I've done in this book about Boz, to do this kind of close album analysis and draw more attention or just highlight how you can have an intense listening experience with each album that you choose to. I'm trying to kind of remind people or inform younger readers if they
yeah,
get into this of that approach anyway.
yeah. What was the first concert you attended with your
Oh.
parents, or did you go with your parents?
Probably. I still go with them a lot to stuff. Um, I went to a Paul McCartney concert in 2000, 2001, 2003. That was my first big rock concert that I remember at Madison Square Garden. And I had grown up, listening to all the Beatles records and feeling very close to that music, like so many rock pop fans, celebrators do. So seeing him live and being in that big arena experience was really exciting for me. I also attended like a Hanson concert a few years before that, but I feel like that's not
Hey,
very
man.
indicative of the time, but for Paul overall.
Um, I grew up in Texas,
Oh, wow.
so a lot of these Texas artists that you mentioned in the book, and then it, I grew up. I wanted to be a musician, so when you heard somebody was from Texas, you immediately immersed yourself in their music. Guys like Steve Miller, ZZ Top.
Yes.
So when I heard Boz Scaggs, my introduction to Boz Scaggs is he had a song in the movie Urban Cowboy,
Yes.
and as a kid, uh, like I man, I'm so far into I love just diving into a song, and that song he had in that movie really made an impact in me. And it wasn't until years later that I realized, oh, that's this guy. And I really got into his music, but it was just that album, that one album. And then about 8 or 9 years ago, I dove back into his back catalog, and
Yes.
it's just amazing, like how good he is, how talented he is, and how versatile he was. What made you like want to write a book about the music of Boz Scaggs?
It's so true when you can come into Boz's experience with that one song like the one you're talking about, or this one album like the Silk Degrees album, for example, and that stands alone as this beautiful work and could be enough. But when you get into, like you're saying, you do the backtracking and you look at the past albums, even the albums leading up to Silk Degrees, for example, and it's such a rich listening experience and it's so diverse. And some of my favorite albums are from the albums leading up to the Silk. Silk Degrees is considered the biggest success, commercially speaking, and I suppose critically. But like the Moments album from the early '70s is one of my favorite Boz records, and I got to spend a lot of time writing this book, listening to that album in particular, and kind of taking apart the different the moodier elements of it, the Van Morrison influence that I hear, and then Boz's instrumental composition, which I believe closes out the record, which is so beautiful. So that kind of thing. And then, as you mentioned, Steve Miller, Boz's early years with a very early version of the Steve Miller Band, and he's on their first two studio albums and doing listening there, and just really getting or absorbing the fact that Boz's career touches so many different areas of music history, different bands like we're talking about, and that trend continued throughout his career too. Like when he worked with the Toto guys, who weren't even yet quite Toto,
Yeah.
around the Degrees era, and so his career touches so many historical points of interest. His interest in blues and doing a lot of blues covers albums, that I was able to talk about rock music history in that context too in the book. So it was very exciting for me, that part of it.
How much research did you do going into this book before you started it? I mean, were you already a fan of his music?
Yes, yeah, I've always been a fan. I probably, before writing this anyway, had spent the most time with the Steve Miller Band albums, those two, because I'm really a fan of Steve's and stuff, especially, and of course the classic later '70s, early to mid '70s stuff that Steve did. Um, I had been a huge fan of the Silk Degrees record, and then the what I call the trilogy, the Down to the Left record that came out after that, and then Middleman in 1980. That kind of, they're united in my view, and I had done so much listening to that just naturally as a celebrator listener. Um, and then with research, I did more deep diving listening, like listening and re-listening to every record, just so I felt I had a grasp of what I felt the record represented and was, and could talk about it more easily in the chapters. And I also did a lot of reading of past live and record reviews that I could get a hold of, and different interviews that Boz did over the years with different publications like Rolling Stone magazine and Melody Maker and that stuff, just to get a full, try to properly represent the different eras. And then, of course, getting to interview some artists that Boz did work with, like Steve Lukather, David Paich, David Hungate, and Steve Porcaro from Toto, who were very helpful and informative with that interesting time in Boz's career, the Silk Degrees tour, and co-writing that album with David Paich, who wrote the foreword for the book, which was great for me. And then I got to speak with Jim Peterman, who was in that early version of the Steve Miller Band. So that kind of stuff was enjoyable for me as a rock music fan person. And then I was glad to be able to incorporate their firsthand accounts of some of the events discussed into the chapters.
Yeah, I love when you're talking with Steve Peterman, and he's like, my first gig with them with the Steve Miller Band was the Monterey Pop Festival.
Yes, Jim Peterman.
Jim
I'm
Peterman.
hearing that too, because I'm such a fan of that concert film, the Monterey Pop film, and familiar with so many of the scenes and stuff. And I don't believe Steve's scenes were in the final cut of like the theatrical version of that. But yes, it was such a change being this up and coming musician, and all of a sudden you're playing at this major festival, and the festival that goes down in history as being so. And he handled it well. I believe, of course, being musically able to, but just another thing that was happening in the crazy wild world of the 60s in California, which I wish I could have been at.
And David Paich, like you said, wrote the foreword. A key member in Toto. They weren't, like you said, they weren't quite Toto yet. What are his thoughts about that time?
That's a great question. He speaks so highly of it, of course. And he was on fire right then as this young composer, having worked with other artists leading up to working with Boz. But it seems, and I try to present this in the book, that anybody he would have kind of worked with at the time, he was ready to go with. He would create these or co-create these stellar compositions. Yeah. And the fact that it was Boz was a match made in heaven, I feel, for several reasons. One reason being that, and I discuss this in the book in different ways, but I feel like Boz's best work is often with another musician, a collaborator of some kind that he can bounce ideas off of. And he, in my opinion, his energy, even his creative energy, is a little bit more laid back. So he really works well with someone who kind of eggs him on further, whether it's someone like Jude Warne in his early years with his first U.S. studio album. Jude was, encouraging him to pursue that and to make a record, and out came this stellar result. And I feel like co-writing as well, like working with David Paich, also brought a similar productive result. And I think David, being a bit, younger and perhaps not more current, but being at the element of starting out at his career, he injected some more of the timeliness of the sounds of the day, like, echoes of dance and disco music that are in the Silk Degrees record here and there. And he brought Boz even a bit more forward into the current musical dialogue that was going on.
Yeah, plus those cats, man, they were playing with everyone. They weren't scared to do anything, and they were open to like experimenting with what he had. Another story that I really did not have any clue about was that Lowdown was considered for Saturday Night Fever.
Yes.
And they didn't really, they went with another movie.
One of those classic cases in history of like just kind of picking the wrong horse in a way. I mean, Looking for Mr. Goodbar is also an interesting film, culturally valuable in a way, but it doesn't have that mega level of the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack. Is one of the best-selling soundtracks ever, and just the other beautiful songs that are on there. So I think that would have fit perfectly. And I mentioned in the book how John Travolta, at the time that film was being worked on, that he was dancing in clubs, on his own to songs like Lowdown. And so it was just proved the further topical, relevant quality of that record.
And so you think that would have changed maybe the course of Silk Degrees?
I don't know if it would have changed it. I think it would have just, the impact.
In its own, it's a great album. It did well.
Exactly. It had made such a cultural impact and commercial success either way, any way you look at it. But I do feel that it would have been even more fitting in through the lens of history, just that if it were to be part of that soundtrack, which the sounds, the sonic quality of the other songs on the record could match a bit, and it would just be another feather in Boz's cap, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm being a huge fan of Toto. The fact that David Paich does mention, like, when he was presented this, Boz really didn't work with other people, and like you said, that you're right. He did his best work when he did collaborate.
Yes.
And those guys, like I said, those guys were not quite on top of the world yet, but musically were far beyond their years.
Totally. And just they were, Hungate, Jeff Porcaro, and David Paich were considered one of the best working rhythm sections at the time in any, in the studio world of the LA studio scene. And that further made, the effective or the sonic success of the Silk Degrees record work well, I believe. Jeff Porcaro's drumming on that is insane, as it is with anything he's ever done. I think I love his work, but yeah, it is interesting to look at it that way. And then with having other players like Steve Lukather and Steve Porcaro joining the touring band just further proved, these Toto guys could play with anyone and would prove that to be the case, how they're just these great instrumentalists.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was an exciting time for everyone.
So the Toto was very prominently featured in this documentary about yacht rock.
Yes.
Why do you think, and do you think it was a bit of like, Boz Scaggs' music isn't considered yacht rock, especially from that album forward. And it could easily be, but it's not. And it's like when it comes on, it's in its own thing. And if you listen to the older stuff, you hear elements of everything he's done in everything. The dance, the disco, the rock, the blues, it's all in there in everything. Why do you think he's not like considered yacht rock?
Well, I think if I remember correctly, with the documentary, they do show the Silk Degrees album cover or reference it, and like this could kind of be, because that one album could arguably sonically be in that same world. And I think some of it is, as you mentioned, because of the studio players on it or the Toto guys who, as that documentary discusses, I believe, they're on so many of the so-called yacht rock recordings just due to the era and their versatility as musicians in the studio. But why Boz wasn't more in that category, so to speak, I think it's because of his immediate love for blues music, and the beginning of the book talks about this in a way, his upbringing in Texas, as we mentioned, and his love of the blues guitar, and that was his first love in a way. And if you trace his career, he several times in his career he comes back to that first love. With the One Home album a bit later, after the '70s stuff, of course. And then recently his trilogy of albums that came out are all a lot of blues covers playing homage to those classic recordings and the Texas sound that his voice works so well with, I think. And he has such a natural love and appreciation and understanding for blues music, I feel, and it suits his voice. So I feel like if you were to describe himself, he would detail so intensely about his connection to blues music, which is very far away, in my view, from like anything yacht rock ish. So that's
he says it in the book, or there's a quote from him that he's still trying to capture this Ray Charles show he did.
Yes,
he watched years ago. He's still trying to recapture that. That's what he's trying to recreate.
Right. I love that. And it reminded me of we're all kind of like that with or I believe, from a certain event or your first love as a child. And even it's like the rosebud syndrome in a way, like we're trying to get back to that the first time we ever loved something or someone or whatever it is, to recreate that feeling. And with artists and with Boz and his music, a lot of it is that to kind of, but I don't know if you could ever once again recreate that high, the first time, arguably.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Do you have a certain playlist that you listen to, or do you curate anything before you start a project?
Yes. Well, being a total like wannabe DJ music nerd, I have so many playlists going on all the time. For this book, I did put together a playlist of songs that I wanted to, I discuss, as reading it, so many of the songs on all these different studio records. I have a very short playlist I made that was associated like with my publisher on the time the book came out, about here's a go-to list for someone who didn't know where to start, I guess, with Boz's stuff. And a lot of that is, of course, the Silk Degrees era material. I had certain songs. I had another playlist going with Boz's stuff for myself when I was writing it, just, consisting of songs that I felt were very impactful in terms of like these plot points in Boz's career. Um, one of which is the last song on the second Steve Miller Band album, Dime Dance Romance, which is a Boz song, but it's a Steve Band recording, of course. But Boz's his solo quality comes out so strongly in that recording, and it's just this great rock song that has a jump and jack flash sound to it. It's this driving beat, and all the music on it's beautiful and very exciting. And to me, it sounds like Boz's singing in that is kind of like he sounds like a magician or someone who's kind of conjuring up something. And in my view, I saw it as like he was, on his way out of the band and made that decision or was going to make it and was kind of conjuring up his forthcoming solo career, which I think was a great move for him
Yeah.
musically. Um, so that I discuss, and then I also tried to do another plot point bits that would be part of a playlist with my discussion of the song "A Clue," which is on the Down to the Left album, and that was Steve Lukather's breakout, solo recording as a very young studio player that got him so much attention and was kind of the beginning of this incredible solo, or rather studio guitarist career that
Yeah.
traced with so many famous recordings after that. But that was kind of the beginning of it. So to me, you can kind of hear like fate coming together in the background, and it has this magic quality. And the solo is one of my favorite guitar solos of all time. I just think it's so perfect.
Right. So I love to hear you talk about music because I think above all you're a writer, but I think you're just a music celebrator.
Yeah, thank you. I like that word. As we spoke about, yes, I try to put that same passion that I feel, listening to these songs, and like a lot of people feel, I believe, I try to translate that, so to speak, in the words. Although to me, in some view, it always falls short of the recordings themselves because you cannot reproduce the sound, of course, on the
Yeah.
page. Try to get as close as possible.
Well, the way you describe a lot of the music, and I haven't finished the book, but the way you tell your stories, the way you tell his story and talk about his music, you really do a great job of making. If you're not there, you hear it. Especially if you're familiar with the music. You know,
Yeah. Thank you
so
so much. I'm
yeah,
so
I
glad
really
to hear
enjoyed that. Was there anything you uncovered about Boz that you didn't know, like in talking to everyone?
that. I don't know about something I didn't know, but in a way, with each person I spoke with, like the Toto guys, Jim Peterman, and I spoke with the photographer Moshe Bralka, who did the famous album cover for Silk Degrees, and I also spoke with some early people, from earlier in Boz's career too. But I think his character, as I try to portray it or paint it in the book, as this kind of reclusive, shy, very sensitive, very musical person. That understanding was kind of confirmed, so to speak, in my view, to each person I spoke with, each you know uh, reference that I read in a review or an interview kind of thing. It was reconfirmed so that I was able to build this portrait as I saw it. And I find his persona so interesting because there's something, I suppose, with any artist, there's an elusive quality that you can't quite totally grasp that maybe adds to the
Exactly.
mystery of why you want to keep going back to his or her work. Um, but I love the contrast between he's this kind of sensitive, shy, creative person, but he was also forced or drawn out to be this performer. He's an incredible live performer and is very, seemingly not introverted at those moments. If you watch any concert footage or any part of that element of his persona, so I love the kind of paradox of that. I tried to depict that in the book as well.
Yeah, and the way you capture that, like from his early beginnings, his time in Sweden, like it was for him just about the music. Like he wasn't looking for to be the front guy or
Yeah,
the rock and roller. So I like the way you captured that.
thank you. I believe that too. He really has this kind of hippie, beatnik, or as I see it, kind of energy where, yeah, he really was always art forward and didn't even seem to care at certain moments whether he became famous or became noted beyond, just doing the work. And arguably that was affected as he got more and more successful, in intelligent ways as you try to maintain your career. Once you see it's going well, of course, you're interested in it and want to preserve it. But naturally, yeah, I think he just does it for the love of the music, and that um, ardor, authenticity comes through in the work.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Whenever you're doing a book and you reach out to your sources or you reach out to other artists to see if they want to talk about it, do you ever get like when you get a reply like, sure, here's my number or whatever, do you kind of get starstruck? Like, oh my God, they said yes. I
Like
do.
for a date, right? Yeah, I know what you mean. Yes, it's always exciting because they never have to say yes, of course. It's kind of doing you a favor, in my case anyway, getting to interview someone for my own writing purposes. Um, but yes, that young fan that's in me that first fell in love with whatever song or record that's associated with their work gets very excited during those moments
Yeah.
too, and I have to try to stay cool. I mean, I do well, I believe, in interviews, you know, maintaining my calm composure and getting the questions out that
Yeah.
I need to without just totally fangirling out. But certain people, like when I first spoke with Steve Lukather, that was very exciting for me. I'm such a fan of his guitar work and kind of a guitar. I wish there was a sexier word than guitar freak or like, but that's kind of, I'm the milder version of whatever that is. But just getting to speak with him, and he's so cool and so nice and helpful and charming and hysterically funny. I mean, that was just like very exciting for me. And then other times, like I interviewed Chris Stein once when his memoir came out. And I love Blondie's work, and I think Chris is one of the coolest musicians I've ever met. So I had to keep it together during that moment. And just like, he was almost too cool for me, just to
Yeah.
get to speak with him.
I'm the same way. Like I always say like I can keep it pro, but inside I'm
Yes.
freaking out,
Right.
you know.
That's
Like
exactly
I've
right.
worked with some of my heroes,
Yes.
being in the same room with them, I'm like, okay, yeah, cool. And then I walk out, I'm like, oh my God, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
and then I have to see them the next day and work for them again.
It's so great. But yes, I know what you mean.
Well, the, I really like the book. Like I said, I'm listening to it, the audiobook, and I really enjoy the way it is, and I can't wait to continue it. And it's a little early, but do you have any thoughts on what you got going on next?
Yeah, so I'm so glad you're enjoying the audiobook because I love how that narration came out with I think the voice actor is incredible. But yes, now I'm working on developing another book about the music of Robert Palmer in a similar style to the Boz book, where it's going to go into analysis or discussion of each studio album and his work with the Power Station band, and his early work with Vinegar Joe and that kind of stuff. So I'm very excited writing about it. As I'm just a fan of so much of his stuff. So
Yeah,
yes, that's what I've been working on lately.
right on. Is there a dream artist you'd like to sit down with and maybe write a biography about them?
Um, Maybe like the ghost of Jack Kerouac. I wish I could do that with. But in reality now, I love Bruce Springsteen. I wrote my master's thesis about his Darkness on the Edge of Town
Uh-huh.
album. So I love doing deep dives into his stuff. I just think he's one of the coolest musicians ever. And some of his early work when I was in college and I really got into it, reading, studying his lyrics, it made me want to write a little bit differently, like bring in some of the poetic language that a lot of his early lyrics has. And I mean, that's how I see it, in the Asbury Park record, the first one, and then the Wild, Innocent, and the E Street Shuffle album. So if I ever got to meet him or get to work with him in any writing capacity, that would be, he's one of my dream guys.
That's great, man. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you on all of that about him.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a huge fan as well. I've met some of the artists that really, uh, for lack of a better word, touched me. And when I meet them, I forget anything I want to ask them.
Yes,
I'm just like, hey, and I'm trying to be cool about it. Hey, how's it going?
of
And then I
course.
walk away going, why didn't I ask him that? What did he mean by these lyrics?
Yes, come with like a notepad of questions.
Yeah, right.
I felt like that. With my mom, we ran into Paul McCartney once on the street, just in our neighborhood, and he was on his way to something, and we stopped him, and he was so nice, and we had a very quick exchange, and he had to kind of like go, and we were very starstruck, of course. But I also had that thing of after, like, I wanted to tell him I was named after his song, Hey Jude, and we could spoken about that at length. No, he had to go. But yes, I have a lot of moments like that too.
Well, Jude, I have a couple of more questions for you. Um, uh, these are not about the book.
Okay.
What is your Deserted Island album?
Oh, I love that question. Um, I think I have to say The Night Fly by Donald Fagen. It's one of my favorite records, and I could listen to it on repeat all day long and never get tired of it. It has the narrative satisfaction that I look for in certain, so to speak, like concept albums, I guess you could argue that that is. So that it doesn't bore me there. And then the music is just so gorgeous. So yes, that album.
Right on, man. That's a deep cut.
Yes, I know. Well, there you go.
There's something I'd like to ask you. The best part and worst part of your day so far.
Today,
Best part, worst part.
the worst part is that I didn't sleep that well last night. I broke my shoulder a few weeks ago, and I'm doing well, and I'm on like the positive end of the recovery thing and doing my daily life, but I don't sleep that well because of it. So that kind of colors my mornings a lot. So it's the worst part. And the best part is probably speaking with you today about all this great music and having a nice conversation.
Oh, thank you. That's nice. That's nice. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. There's one more question. Our podcast is called Is Breakfast Included? And if we were having breakfast, what would you have?
Also a great question. I love breakfast. I would have avocado toast with feta cheese and an egg. That's like my favorite breakfast.
All right. Coffee or juice?
One coffee and probably juice. If I were going to go all out, I'd do both. What about you? Can I ask you that?
I like pancakes. But lately, and I think it's showing my age, I just order oatmeal and toast.
Oh, you're so healthy. It's awful.
No, not healthy at all.
A good choice.
Sometimes I order both.
Yeah, I know, because their breakfast has so many options. And when you mentioned pancakes just now, chocolate chip pancakes is like my go-to indulgent breakfast. So that's my second choice.
I love pancakes. I have pancakes no matter where I am in the world.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, man. It was so good talking to you. So good getting to know you. And congratulations on this book. It's really good so far.
I'm so glad you like it.
Like I said, being a Texan and supporting any also Plano, Texas, like that's not a hotbed of creativity there.
Right. It is. It's nuanced.
But anyway, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Very glad to speak with you.
Right on. Jude Warne. What a great conversation, right? I'm really enjoying this book. I highly suggest you go out and get you a physical copy or do the audiobook like I did. You can find out more about Jude at judewarne.com. That's Jude, Jude, Warne, Warne.com. Find out what of her other work she has. Check out what she's all about. Hey, man, and order that book. And while you're online, check out isbreakfast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Rate and review the show at Apple Podcasts. And roll on over to our YouTube page. Subscribe and hit that notification button. And while you're there, buy a shirt. Buy a shirt. I'd like to thank Jude for taking the time to talk to me today. I'm done. Have a great day. We'll talk to you next week.